What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Concrete Edge right here on Deco-Crete TV. My name's Jeff, and on today's episode, we're going to be showing you guys some of the must-have tools for stamped concrete, so stay tuned and you're going to learn all about it. Now, first off, this video is not a complete list of everything you're going to need for a stamped concrete project. These are just some of the specialty tools that'll make the job easier on you and look better in the end. Now, if you're new to concrete and you're looking for a video on just basic concrete tools, on things like rakes or straight edges, bull floats, or any of that other stuff you'd need to just pour and finish concrete, then please check out this episode right here. So for today's show, we've broken it up into a few different categories just to keep things on track. First up are border tools. So if you guys want to make a clean looking border on stamped concrete, man, you're gonna need some kind of a border edger. Now, I'm gonna be honest here, I used to use one of these curb edgers before I knew any better, and I'm not saying that these don't work. I mean, they will cut a border in. It's just gonna be this one size, and that groove just really isn't deep enough for separating color or anything like that. And they really don't define the border that well anyways. But something like this, on the other hand, well, it solves all those problems. Now, you can adjust it to whatever size you want, and this little groover tool, it still makes a big enough groove for separating color, or you can use one of those little texture strips to create a hammered edge look in there if you want. Now, it cleans up nice after stamping, and it really just defines that border. Now, the next thing we're going to need is some of this FRP board. We can take a piece of this stuff and just set it right down in that groove from our edger and use it to separate colors. When it comes time to stamp, this stuff works great just to lay down flat right on the border, and now we can just stamp right out over it, and it keeps the border protected. Now, a small finish trowel like this is also going to come in handy. I mean, that edger does work pretty good for working in the color hardener and smooth things out pretty good on its own, but if you do need to trowel that border at all, well, it can be a real pain if your trowel is too long. Now, there are some great options out there for border stamps with grout lines, but my favorite thing for borders are just small texture skins. I mean, they don't cost very much per skin, and having 4 or 5 of them on hand, or 4 or 5 different ones on hand, it just gives you freedom to just create some really unique borders anytime you want. Now, the last thing we're going to need to do to our border before we're done is some detailing. Now, if you use grout line stamps, just make sure that you have the wheel that matches your stamp's grout line. For texture skins, well, we really love these chisels just for cutting some joints every 3 to 4 feet. And I also like this wedge-shaped wheel just to run back through the groove as a final step. You know, sometimes that groove kind of gets pushed together from stamping, and this wheel just opens it back up and just gives it a really clean look. Now, if you wanted to, this is where you could take one of those texture strips and create a hammered edge look. So next up is finishing, and the biggest thing we stress here is using steel finishing tools before you stamp. Magnesium, it just doesn't lay it out as nice as steel does, and the impressions just won't be as crisp. Now, the best thing we found for this is a Fresno or a funny trowel. Now, the most common tool around our area is definitely a Fresno. Funny trowels just don't seem to be as popular anymore, but let us know in the comments. Do you guys still use a funny trowel? Now, I like this big Fresno. It just has more weight than those smaller ones do, and it gets the job done faster. And speaking of weights, well, these little guys right here are made to fit right on your floater Fresno, and they're just another small item that every stamped concrete contractor should have in their toolbox. I can't tell you how many times these weights have saved us from having to get out on that slab and finish spots by hand. And on those hot days, you just don't have that extra 10 minutes to waste. Now, when it comes to hand tools, I mean, pretty much any finish trowel will work, but we're not finishing this concrete like a garage floor. I mean, it's still pretty wet at this point, and those round ends just keep the trowel marks out easier. Now, this one here is just one of my personal favorites. It's got kind of the best of both worlds. Round ends up here where we need them, and it still has some square corners in the back to get into corners. So after finishing, it's time to start stamping, and a set of concrete stamps are the obvious one here for this one. But having a texture skin to go with it is crucial. I mean, most places that, rent out stamps, they will send a texture skin out with the set, but having a good variety of your own skins is just a great investment for anyone that stamps a lot of concrete. Now, we used to keep an entire stack of these things in our trailer, and we always knew that we had an extra one to match the main stamp's texture. Now, the other thing you're going to need for stamping is a tamper, and there are some really good options out there that are specifically made for stamped concrete, and so I would just stay away from any landscaping tampers or anything else that's made out of steel. Now, a pair of shoe-in flats will help you get on the concrete and start stamping a little bit sooner, and that could be a make it or break it for jobs on hot days. Now you'll also need a release brush if you're using powder, or a sprayer if you're using liquid release. So next up are some detail tools, and same as touch-up skin, man, these items don't cost very much, and having a good arsenal of detail tools is huge. Now this is the box that Jason still keeps around for detailing, and you can see we have just about everything we could possibly need in here. We have touch-up wheels that match pretty much any grout line. This little S tool here is just awesome for finishing out lines up along walls. We keep all our other chisels in here, some texture strips, and even a small hammer. Now to be efficient at detailing grout lines, you will need some kind of a handle to thread that wheel onto. I mean, any broom handle will work, but I really like these extendable handles, or you could even just use a threaded adapter and put it on a bull float handle. Now the big thing is to make sure you have something on hand, and trying to detail with just one of these little wheels all by itself is just really gonna slow things down. So last on the list are just some things that we're gonna need for the day after the pour, and a saw to cut the concrete is the main thing here, but stamped concrete is a little bit different. Some of this is going to depend on whether you use powder or liquid release. We always use powder, so the first thing that I would do when I got back to the job is I'd just take a soft bristle broom and I'd sweep that excess release off right where the saw cuts needed to go, because it's really hard to hold a chalk line on top of release powder. Now if you use liquid release, you don't have to worry about any of that, but you will need a brush to apply your antiquing. Now, a pressure washer is just a must-have if you're using powder, but even with liquid release, it still comes in handy for cleaning up all the sawdust. Now, another thing I would just never leave at the shop on a wash day is our low-speed buffer machine. A few other things would be a ball peen hammer just for closing up any surface cracks, and a bucket sifter if you need to do any repairs. Well guys, that's pretty much it for today's show. Please leave us a comment if we missed anything, or if you have any questions on tools for stamped concrete. Thank you guys so much for watching these videos, and we really appreciate all the support that you guys show the channel. Now we covered a lot today in a short amount of time, but we do have full videos on a lot of the things we've talked about, so make sure to check out our stamped concrete playlist. If you guys have enjoyed today's video, please let us know by hitting those like and subscribe buttons, and if you're already subscribed, don't forget about that bell icon so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and it really helps our channel out. So from all of us here at Deco-Crete TV, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.